Hey, leaders, have you ever struggled with stepping into those tough conversations? Do you find it hard to mediate conflicts and hold your team accountable? Well, we've got just the thing for you, a free resource called How to Step into the Hard Conversations Using the ACDC Method. Leaders must address the hard stuff. That's part of the job. But let's face it, not everyone has the skills to navigate these tricky dialogues effectively. And that's where the ACDC method comes in. This powerful approach helps leaders like you resolve conflicts with a focus not just on the resolution, but on reconciliation and a clear path forward. Most of the work happens before you even step foot in front of the other person. With the ACDC method, you'll learn to accept the challenge, check your ego, decide the real issue, and converse effectively. Whether you're dealing with a minor disagreement or a major incident, this method is your go-to guide. So, ready to transform your leadership and tackle those tough conversations head on? Download How to Step into the Hard Conversations using the ACDC method for free. Visit leadershipontherocks.com/conflict and start leading with confidence and clarity. Again, make sure to download our free resource and turn conflict into a constructive conversation. Visit leadershipontherocks.com/conflict now.
Life and business and leadership is like surfing in the ocean. We will get knocked off our surfboard because of uncertainty, change, things that we didn't see coming, and it's our resilience that gets us back on the surfboard, and it's our brilliance that allows us to catch the next wave.
This is the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, where we equip and empower leaders like you to thrive in and create harmony between your professional and personal lives. I'm your host, Bethany Reese, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking with award-winning keynote speaker, coach, and author Simon Bailey about resilience. Simon T. Bailey is the world's leading expert in brilliance. His groundbreaking research, State of Working America report, Thriving in Resilience and Brilliance, solidifies his insights in his 11th book, Resilience at Work: How to Coach Yourself into a Thriving Future. With Disney Institute as his launchpad, he's left an indelible mark on 2,400 plus organizations in 54 countries, including American Express, Deloitte, Visa, Signet Jewelers, and Taco Bell. He's made a remarkable impact on 120,000 professionals who's experienced his pioneering courses on the LinkedIn Learning platform. He's also been recognized as Success Magazine's top 25, alongside Brené Brown, Tony Robbins, and Oprah Winfrey, as well as leading on Leaders Hub Top 200 Power List. Y'all, his viral video released on Goalcast through Meta has 91 million plus views to date. So welcome to the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, Mr. Bailey. I am pumped that you are here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Man, well, like a lot of our listeners, I found you on Goalcast, right? I love those videos. They're so inspiring. And all of your videos, I specifically love how to be the best parent because, preach to me, absolutely. And then how to achieve the life you deserve. I'm crying, I'm clapping, I'm like, amen, keep preaching through all of those videos. They're so good. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners have seen them, but I got to know, you are on fire. You are stirring up fire within us. And I want to know, and I have to ask, what lit the fire in you to go forth and inspire and teach others like you do?
So I was sitting at my desk at the happiest place on earth. And
There you go.
I hadn't quite sniffed the pixie dust. I thought
I
you
love
would
it.
like that one.
Uh,
And if the truth be told, I was working hard enough to keep a job and doing just enough to keep from getting fired. The lights are on, but nobody's at home. I was one flight short of a picnic. And what I recognized, I was just kind of there going through the motions. And I believe that God had more in me, that my life wasn't over yet. So Disney sent me to Paris to design a leadership program for 1,000 leaders out of Barclays Bank out of London. And Lion King had just come out, and I was sharing leadership lessons in Lion King. And all of a sudden, I had this epiphany on stage. I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I am supposed to be doing, because it was something I was first introduced when I was 15 years of age. And it was a teacher, Miss Rita Lankus. I'm forever grateful for her. And she encouraged me to give a speech. And that was a marker. But I had kind of ran away to go to school, get a job, get married, have kids, all the things we're taught to do. So I came back full circle and I found my voice. And I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So came back from Paris and I realized that my days were numbered at Disney, and I got a call from a journalist. And whenever you work at Disney, you never talk to the media. And
Mm.
this guy calls me, says, where do you see yourself 10 to 15 years from now? And I said, I see myself as the president and CEO of the Walt Disney World Resort and eventually chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company. Let's just say that didn't go over quite well.
Mm.
And so that became the catalyst for me finding my happiness elsewhere.
I understand. Isn't it amazing? I love that you use the word marker. I think as we look back over our careers, we can see those points in times where we're learning things about ourselves of, hey, somebody encouraged me or said I had a skill that I never really noticed. And then it does come full circle usually. God will place those markers in your life and you don't even realize what he's building in your life. And the whole time he's putting those stakes down. It's so cool.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and sometimes we realize that whenever somebody says, now you have to leave and go do it. And you're like, all right, let's go. Uh, so I am just so excited about what you talk about. People listening, they know I worked in the school system for a long time. And the two things that you discuss are just huge on my heart. You are the leading expert in brilliance and resilience. But being the heart of a teacher that I have and the teacher that I am, we got to define those words for everybody listening. So can you just like lay a foundation of what you mean by brilliance and resilience before we get into talking about them?
Yes, so let me set it up with a framework. Life and business and leadership is like surfing in the ocean. We will get knocked off our surfboard because of uncertainty, change, things that we didn't see coming. And it's our resilience that gets us back on the surfboard. And it's our brilliance that allows us to catch the next wave. Okay.
Oh, yes.
So, what's the understanding? We surveyed and asked 1,000 working Americans. We gave them 17 choices and we asked them, what are the top choices as it relates to resilience? And working Americans told us that resilience is perseverance, grit, and problem solving.
Yeah.
So, in other words, people have figured it out. I need to have grit. I've got to persevere and figure out a way to keep going. We asked the same question as it relates to brilliance. And working Americans told us that brilliance is intelligence, confidence, and creativity. And we were like, whoa. So when we step back, what we begin to realize, our team and the research group that we work with, what we realize is that people have this resilience. They're going to figure it out. They're going to keep going. But it's that brilliance that allows them to say, not only am I going to bend and not break, I'm going to be better and not bitter, but I'm going to create the future in the present by using my intelligence and my creativity to look through the windshield of where I'm going instead of the rearview mirror of where I've been.
Oh, that's so good. And as you were listing out all those things that working Americans said, this is what these represent to us. I have sat in that hiring chair a lot, and I have hired and I've interviewed thousands of people, but I've hired hundreds, if not 1,000. And I'm like, yeah, I would hire anybody who had those things because I can teach you how to do the thing, but I can't teach you how to have those because they're so internal, they're so built in. And so I love your new book. I've started reading it. Resilience at Work, How to Coach Yourself into the Thriving Future. And I just want to say it's a parable. I love that. I am so able, just like I'm sure all the readers out there, we can connect through the parable, the story of how can we grasp that concept of growth. And it's so good. And your four characters crack me up. It's hurry, worry, steady, and ready. And I can identify with all of them, just like I'm sure everybody else can. So I want to know what led you to write this parable about these four characters: hurry, worry, steady, and ready.
So I've been impacted by the work of C.S. Lewis. And certainly, if we go back years ago, there was a book written called Who Moved My Cheese?
Oh,
And I woke up 3 o'clock in the morning. I know it was nothing but the Holy Spirit, literally with the four characters plus one, curious being the fifth personality archetype. And I told my wife, I said, oh my goodness, I'm supposed to write this book. It's a parable. And I had never written a parable before. So it was a bit of a stretch. But what I recognize is that there are people who are listening to us right now. They are living life in a hurry. In fact, our research of Working America said that 56% of working Americans are living life in a hurry. They're not enjoying life as much as they should. 48% of working Americans are worried about the future. And what's interesting, research says that when the brain is worried, you actually slow down. You're not creating neurogenesis, which is the process of growing neurons, which grows the brain. Because worry has a BFF called stress and fear, that literally the gremlins of discouragement begin to speak into your life and they slow down the human operating system, and the Holy Spirit is not able to flow through you as it should be in your life. But then there are individuals, Bethany, that are ready and steady. The steady people, they are calm. They have that peace that passeth all understanding. And so they can in the room and just their presence fills the room. And then the person that's ready says, you know what? I have been to hell and back. I have been through a lot of stuff, but I am ready for whatever's coming my way.
Oh, that's so good. And just hearing you say all of that, and I know you mentioned this in your book, but I really identify those are all seasons of my life. Stepping into, new leadership, I am hustling, right? I am hurrying through things to just get it done, right? Prove that I am the thoroughbred that I, achieve at this level. And then you start, just making it in your career, but then you're also, for those that have families, you have families and all this stuff is piled on you. And then you start to worry and you're like, oh no, can I do it all? Can I handle it all? And I feel like as I read through your book, you're talking about every aspect of my life. And now that I'm 40 plus, we'll just say that I start to feel way more steady and confident of just like, I don't have to do it all. I'm going to focus on what's important and I'm way more present in whatever room I'm in or whoever it is that I'm with. And I love that. So I feel like it's not just for leaders and just for leadership. It is for life in every aspect of your life. And that's what we want to focus on here on the podcast is it's all connected. It's all
Yes,
connected.
totally.
Yeah. Man. All right. So I'm going to ask, and I'm sure everybody asks you this. I live in Arkansas. I've never been surfing. I know what it is, but why a parable about surfing?
So I was in Solana Beach right outside San Diego a few years ago, and some surfers were coming out of the water, and I ran over to them. I said, "Hey, what's the key to surfing?" And one of the guys planted his board in the sand, and he said, "Whenever you're out surfing and you're hit by a wave, you got to pop back up because if you don't pop back up, you'll be wiped out." And when he said it, it was like, boom. I was like, oh my goodness, how many people life happens and they don't pop back up? So I said, this surfing metaphor, everyone can relate to it because
Mhm.
people surf all the time online, on their phones. Surfing is just embedded in our DNA. But I wanted to connect the dots and say we're all surfing at some level in the ocean of life and business.
Absolutely. I love that. And resilience is so needed. So the book is helping these characters. They go and they sit by a fire and they're kind of just analyzing and sharing. To me, it's like friend therapy. They sit around and they talk. And you have these two friends kind of speaking life into the hurry and the worry. And essentially, I mean, I haven't finished the book. I'm about three-fourths of the way through, but you just feel it building of they're learning the resilience and why it's so essential. So can you tell us that? Can you kind of let us skip ahead? Why is resilience such an essential skill for us to have?
Because resilience invites you to discover you. Resilience invites you into a conversation to realize that in every season, everything you need to thrive is inside of you. But how do you get it out of you? So you go through the friend to friend process, which are three questions that were given to me with permission by Dr. Larry Kefauver, a licensed counselor, that he used this in his practice 40 years ago. And the first question that hurry and worry are invited to answer is, what do you want for you? And the reason that's so important, especially for leaders, is we're taking care of everyone else. But when we zoom out and say, what do I want for me as I am serving, as I am giving, as I'm making a difference, that's where your real honesty starts. Mhm.
Yeah. And I don't think a lot of us can answer that question because we're programmed. This is just a generalization, but it feels like we're almost programmed to answer, I want the job, the title, the house, the car, the things of society, material things. But to peel away all of the layers of that onion to say, wait, what do I really want in life? I don't think a lot of us can answer that. That's something I've struggled with, deprogramming myself from what society says I should be to, I don't know, what should I be? So I think it's such a great journey that you take us on in that. Um, and thinking about resilience, you're hitting the nail on the head. Think about all the problems, conflicts, and constraints that leaders deal with on a daily basis. If they are not resilient, how can they support a team to be resilient as well? So, can you kind of help us understand how do we build that skill set of resilience? And then how do we turn around and help others build that skill set?
Well, our research says 80% of working Americans want leaders to model resilience. So let me offer up some practical recommendations. Number one, every leader wants to consider taking their meds. Meds is an acronym that means
Okay.
meditate, exercise, diet, and sleep. Because until you take care of yourself and become present to yourself, it's difficult to be present to others. So, number one, take your meds. Number two, start with every day. How can I make a difference in the life of someone else? And when you go into work, virtual, online, hybrid, whatever the situation is, the reason you are coming from that place, how do I make a difference in someone else's life, is because the job of a leader is not just motivating people to work harder. The job of a leader is to invite people on a journey to
Mm-hmm.
discover the leader within themselves while they're following you. So, if you come from this ethos of making a difference, you understand that leadership is caught and taught. People are catching something from you in your tone, in your response, in a meeting as to how they can be resilient while watching you. And I think the third thing to consider, here's what the research says: 1 minute spent on recognition creates 100 minutes of initiative. So if you want people to go faster and further, how do you step back and understand their appreciation language? One of my greatest failures, I'm working at Disney and I was not recognizing individuals. I'm like, you should just be happy that you have a job, right? And this is where you insert bless my heart. So
Yeah.
so I go to the Disney University internal training arm. The company says you got to recognize people, blah, blah, blah. So I recognized the team. I pulled the team together. I had about a department of 20 responsible for P&L. And I said, Candace Brady, you had an amazing quarter. And Candace turns flush red, runs out of the room. And I was like, what just happened? So I said to Beverly, my executive assistant, I said, go after Candace and find out what's up. And she came back and she said, Candace doesn't like public recognition.
Mhm.
So I said, Beverly, what do you think we should do? Because all women are right. And she said, why don't you write a handwritten note and mail it to her, recognizing her for what she did? And sure enough, she came in my office a few days later and she said, that's how I want to be recognized. I believe leaders will think about just some of those things that will build resilience in themselves and their teams.
hmm And I think one of the faults, because it's quick and easy, we paint with a broad brush so many times as leaders, and that is not what creates beautiful artwork. Think about it. If every artist out there, did everything with a broad brush, or really, sculptors with a very really wide tool, you're not going to get the intricate, beautiful pieces of that. And we got to remember that it's worth the time to individualize, to seek out and get to know. And the gains are so much more, just like you said. And it's the same with our children. I can't help but see, my brain is wired that way, to see the parallels of leadership into parenting, into marriage, into our homes and our friends and all of that too. Of how are we recognizing our kids whenever, they're working or doing something around the house versus all the things that they're not doing. Because we know there's plenty of those. Oh, I love it. So resilience is, yeah, I love the analogy. It really helps it stick, the surfing thing. If we're getting knocked down, we all know it. We feel it at work. We're getting knocked down, we're getting back up. And so we're modeling that. And I love the key that you had, take our meds. It really does start with self before anything else, because yourself will spill over into the relationships, into the culture, and all the other things. But now taking it a step further and saying, okay, we're working on resilience of getting back up, taking care of myself first, modeling that. what is brilliance as far as how do we even get that to come out? Because we're so locked into systems, processes, and a school system that teaches you to sit down, be quiet, and take in all the information. So, how do we even, I don't know, get to the tip of the iceberg of brilliance?
So, one of the things that I like to teach as it relates to brilliance is there are four questions that individuals must answer. And I wouldn't be so emphatic to say must, but I believe these questions are important. Question number one, where have I been? And so the where have I been question allows you to look back to say, how did I get to this place in time? Question number two, why am I here? One of my mentors, Dr. Miles Monroe, would say years ago, the greatest tragedy in life is not death. The greatest tragedy in life is to be alive and not know why. So why am I here right now? The third question, what can I do? So many times, what blocks brilliance is people are focused on what I can't do. Research says by the time a child is 17 years of age, they have heard no 150,000 times and only yes 5,000 times. So the what can I do question is the control alt delete question that deletes from the mind drive and the heart drive, those things that slow us down. And then that fourth question is where am I going? So the where am I going question is becoming that anticipatory thinker to see what's not yet. When you begin to ask that question and you really answer all four questions, you are practicing true AI, actual intelligence.
I
And
love
when
it.
you practice actual intelligence, what you are saying, you're using your brilliance to create the future, not waiting for the future to be created for you.
I love it. And it's such a lost skill. So, confession, I actually taught in a gifted program for 6 years, and it was third and fourth graders, fifth and sixth graders. And we were teaching critical thinking and creative thinking. And as I was learning how to teach creative thinking, my brain was blown. I just like, wow, this is such an important thing I wish everybody could learn how to do. It's how to ask all of those questions. And I love that you started with that point of asking all of those questions to get your brain to open up and get outside. And I hate to use it, but out of the box. That's what we say, right? To get out of that box to say, what else is possible? What can I do? And it really does help you open up to so many possibilities. And if you see it, and I love the way Steve Jobs used to talk about this, he would have a bunch of dots and he's like, but the creative people can see the dots and how they connected multiple different ways. And that's how you get innovation and all those great ideas. And we are so stifled in that kind of thinking. And I just think in our work, how often are we managers of the status quo? It can't be done. It can't be done. That's not the way the human brain works, or that's just the way she is. We're stuck. And that stifles all problem solving, creative problem solving, innovation. So, what advice would you give to us besides those four questions of how do we help our teams get out of that status quo, it can't be done kind of mentality?
Ensure that your teams are being exposed to other areas of the company. I was working with a company not too long ago, and they had something called I Friday, which stands for Innovation Friday, company of about 700 people. So once a quarter on a Friday, people would go and work in different areas of the company for an entire day. And what's interesting, twofold benefit is they go to work in a place on a Friday and they're like, oh my goodness, why do they do it this way? And what's this? What's that? Total discovery. That's the first
Mhm.
benefit because they're discovering something that's not normal, something that's not the status quo. They're taken out of their comfort zone to see what's not yet or what's happening in other places. But the second benefit is on Monday morning, they go back to their previous role and they said, oh my goodness, on Friday, I discovered X, Y, Z. What if? And that's what every leader wants to hear. What if we borrow brilliance that you learned on Friday? And what if we do it here on Monday and tweak, make better, improve? And what you discover is that person is jazzed up because they learn. See, the word education comes from a word called educare. Educare means to draw out, not just put in. So you draw out of me, what's in me when I'm in an environment that is not common to me because the neural pathways begin to see things differently. It's kind of like the reticular activating system. The first car you get, the moment you drive on the road, all the other cars like yours, you're like, wait a minute, they were always there, but you didn't see it. So when you
Mhm.
immerse something, a person into something you've never seen before, they start to connect the dots and say, what if? And that is one of the breakthroughs to innovation.
Oh, I love it so much. And I, everything you're saying, I just, yes, again, I feel like I'm watching your Goalcast videos. Keep preaching. Education is not, it's to draw out, not to fill in, not to put in. That is amazing. And that's also what we got to look at when we're looking at our teams and our employees and our coworkers. Stop putting in and draw out. And that's why the coaching is so important, guys. You've got to have a coach as a leader, and you've got to be coaching the people on your team as well, or get them access to coaches, because coaches have the skill set to draw out. I love it so much. And thinking about everything that you were talking about, going and visiting other teams, there's a whole nother obstacle you have to get through of we like to work in silos, and we also like competition. No, I don't want to engage with them. I don't want them to see what I'm doing because I want to be the best. And it's very self-focused. Even if you're on the same team, it's like, well, I want to look better because I want to get the promotion. So I don't want to collaborate with the other people. And so there's so many cultural dynamics in there that you've got to build in that environment so that we start to build that environment where we can ask what if by going and watching other people. So I just want you to think about all those things. I feel like with everything that we talk about in leadership, it's like there's layers.
Mm, totally.
Yeah, lots of layers. Well, Mr. Bailey, you've given us so much advice. So as we, think about everything you've talked about, resilience, brilliance, and all of those things, what are some key takeaways for our listeners that they need to apply to grow within their leadership?
I think number one, we are now in an era where David Brooks did an op-ed piece in the New York Times entitled The Rising Tide of Global Sadness. And they looked back 50 years ago and they realized the music 50 years ago was about love and happiness. If you look at the music in the last few decades, it's been about sadness and sometimes hate. So leaders have to recognize everybody is dealing with something. They have been triggered. There's a line in his op-ed piece that says the emotional health of the world is shattering. So
Mm,
leaders have to care about individuals and let people know that I see you as a human being, not a human doing. You're not a, social security number in the HR payroll system. I, as a leader, care about you as a team member. Number one. Number two, what can I do to best serve you? That is not a self-serving question. That is that question where you pull up that chair next to that person and say, it's not about me, it's about we. And I'm using mental post-it notes and bumper stickers so that this sticks, so that people know, wow, you're a different kind of leader. You're just not in it for you and the
mm,
KPIs and the measurements and all the things that we've been taught to do. You really want me to be the best human being that I can be. And I think the third thing to realize is that, yes, business is important, but how do we move from success to significance? Put people before profit, you will become more profitable. How do you keep people at the center of every decision that you're making, even when you need to have the tough conversations? How do you ensure that you're doing it in a place of love? Love is tough. How do you
mm.
hug them with your words?
Yes. It's so true. Having had several of those hard conversations, my old boss used to say they should always leave you with their dignity. That is never what we're talking about is their dignity. We're talking about performance or whatever. And it was so good. And everything that you're saying really helps me hyper focus on the condition of our own hearts as leaders. Why are we in it? What are we doing it for? Because so much about leadership, great leadership is selfless. And it doesn't mean that yes, take your meds, take care of yourself. That's not what I'm talking about. But it is truly, you got to have that heart to love and care for people so that you are willing to do those hard things. I love it. Mr. Bailey, I've got to ask you, I ask all of my guests, what is one poor decision that our leaders should avoid? Like, come on, leaders, don't do it. Don't do that thing. You're better than that.
Make sure that you build your life around who will be crying at your funeral. I made this mistake. I was chasing money but had no meaning, pursuing power but had no purpose. And it was all about a chair, a check, and a cup of coffee in Cubicle Farm. And I woke up and my then wife said to me, "You give everybody the best of you, but you give us the rest of you, and I don't want the leftovers anymore." Here's the reality. If you kick the bucket, expire, or check out tomorrow, God forbid, your job will be posted on the internal internet and life will go on. So don't forget your family. Uh, I I pursued trying to succeed, and my ladder was against the wrong wall. Thank you, Dr. Stephen Covey, for teaching us that. So, how do you ensure that your ladder stays against the right wall? So, when you become better at home, you become better for business. Don't twist it up. That's the
Oh,
truth.
amen. I told you every time you speak, I'm like, yes, and amen. It's so true. And that really is the point of this podcast is how do we create that harmony where we can grow professionally, but not at the expense of our personal lives?
Yeah.
Because everything that we do in leadership should also be applied at home and caring for the family. Thank you for that advice. It was so good. So where can our listeners go to learn more about you, your work? Where can we get your book, Resilience at Work? And where can they watch those amazing videos?
Yes, they can go to simontbailey.com or Amazon. All of our books are there, and they'll find our information.
Awesome. Guys, I will have links all in the show notes for all of those things. Mr. Bailey, thank you so much for just sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Guys, until next time, continue putting in the work of building your life and leadership on the rocks, the essential rocks. God bless. Remember, the most essential rock you can build your life and leadership on is the rock of Jesus Christ. Today's Bible verse comes from Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Hey, it's Bethany again. If you're enjoying the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss a single episode. Also, be sure to rate the show. We hope to earn 5 stars in serving you in leadership, and through your ratings, it'll help us get the word out about what we do here at Leadership on the Rocks. If you feel this podcast is helpful, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and coworkers, or anyone who wants to grow in leadership, but also have harmony between their work and home life. Thanks, and I'll see you again in the next episode.